They're only been and I could go to the second like that. If I'm in this one, he won, obviously. And so he's this kid, he's literally yes, the only
Good evening, everybody. Welcome to Student Senate. We'll begin with a prayer in the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Once again, I want to keep close to our hearts all of those ravaged by war, those in Ukraine, Ethiopia, Syria, and as we pray, Lord, lead us from life to death, or from death to life. Wow. From death to life. From falsehood to truth, lead us from despair to hope, from fear to trust. Let peace fill our hearts, our world, and our universe. Let us dream together, pray together, and work together to build one world of peace and justice for all. Amen. Moving on to roll call. The roll call question this week is, what is your go-to self-care activity?
Happy business.
Taking a hike.
James Barry.
I guess napping.
Madeline Smith here. If I'm at home with hang out with my mom. Daniel Furlong.
Here playing piano.
Faith Woods. Here. Baking. Nolan Lyon.
Here, I'd say golfing.
Abby Donahue. Colin Murray. Daniel Miranda Clara.
Shopping.
Monica Barron. Here, going to a coffee shop and reading a book. Amani Mathey. Here, sleeping. McLean Farrell.
Here, throwing a football.
Patty News. Emma Eckstein. Here, also still taking a nap. Isabel Carey. Cooper Scholl.
You're on Zoom, face masks.
Ben Earhart.
Present, it's a golf.
Abraham Figueroa.
Cooking.
Madeline Kosabuki.
I'm here, and I'd say reading.
Mary Griffin. Here, golfing. Taylor Locke.
Baking.
Christian Yoder.
Here, I'd say reading.
Brian Kern.
Here, binge watching TV.
Luke Blazik. Lizzie Martin. Here, watching movies. Veronica Southern. Here and working out. Elizabeth Gonzalez. Here and skincare. Michael Jacob.
Here, I'd also say working out.
Zachary Cordell. Martha Castelletti.
Here and listening to music.
Mary DeVille. Here. James Grenett. Donnie DeLuca. Paul Solis.
So taking the camera out, you don't appreciate it.
Nick Lowry.
He's here.
Timothy Gallagher.
Yeah, I like taking a nap.
Maddie Susie. Here, I don't know if you guys know, it's super niche, that game on the Wii where you have to like find the movies, it like tells you to like find like the my roommate and I do that all the time. Thomas Davis.
Here, I also like it.
Alan Jomo.
Here. I like the last one.
Madison Nima.
Here and the occasional bubble bath.
Claire.
Here.
Playing piano and viola.
David Clausen. Here, probably like cleaning my room. Caroline Cameron.
Here, I would say working out.
Avery Webb. David Holmes. Daniel Lau. Mo Doyle.
Here, and insanely delicious comfort food. Making it sometimes, usually letting someone else make it for me more often than not.
Moving on to the approval of minutes. Are there any changes to last week's minutes that we should be aware of? Hearing none, without objection, the minutes are approved. Into executive announcements, once more, a plug for Hall of the Year grading signups.
Alas, the time is not. Just kidding. It's almost time for holiday presentations. We need you guys. Okay, we need you to grade. People on Zoom, we need you too. We're very excited. Okay, so what I'm trying to do is get enough senators to like only schedule you guys for like an hour, which is 3 presentations. So that way it's like not that big of a deal, not that big of a time commitment. So I need probably like 7 to 10 more people. So that way that can happen. Or else the people that have already signed up are gonna get like 5 to 6 presentations to grade, which is chill, but like want to value your time. Unless you really want to grade that many, then like let me know. I'd love that. But yeah, fill out the form ASAP. Yes. You do have to be a senator. So we need 2 senators and then someone from Judicial Council exec. There's 4 of them. Hey, David. And then we need the 2 student life directors. So that's our crew. And also the HBC exec board, obviously. It's gonna be super fun. And if you're lucky, I'll schedule guys. So you are right before lunch and after lunch, and we'll cater you lunch. So you guys should do it.
Are there any other questions about the Hall of the Year sign up? Hearing none. Another reminder, the Inclusive Campus Survey closes this week on the 4th. So be sure to fill that out. You all should have gotten a unique link in your email. If you have any questions or trouble, you can come to me or I can send you to a staff person that can help. I want to turn it over to either David or Madison to talk about Judicial Council officer applications.
Oh yeah. So the email and the application isn't technically out yet, but it should be out this week. Position or applications are available for the Vice President of Elections, Vice President of Peer Advocacy, and the Parliamentarian. So if you have interest or you know someone who may have interest in those positions, like your halls, or anybody that you know that those applications will be available, and the due date will be March 18th. So it'll be the Friday after spring break is when they're due.
And would you give a quick brief about what those other 3 officers do?
Oh yeah, okay. So the VP of Elections oversees the elections. They chair the election committee, work with the election committee to figure out how to increase turnout, make sure that elections are run efficiently and fairly. And then the Vice President of Peer Advocacy, make sure, well, I'm not sure if everybody's aware like what peer advocates are, but when people maybe get in OCS trouble, they have the opportunity to be appointed peer advocate in a very, safe way. And so basically the VP oversees all of the peer advocates and make sure that all that's running, make sure that we have a good relationship with OCS, and is also working on some other interesting things down the line with that. And then the parliamentarian gets to come to Senate with you guys and advise on parliamentary procedure. Also goes to Campus Life Council, gets to chair the Committee on the Constitution, and also attends Election Committee or Ethics Commission hearings.
Thank you. Are there any questions on those positions or applications? Cool. I just wanted to link for you all the Student Government Progress Report, a nice little document, kind of summing up some of the big wins from our year, our cabinet departments, as well as, Alan, Elise, and I working in student government. So if you have any questions there, happy to take them, or we can talk about it afterwards. And then before we get to happy spring break, I sent you all an email later last night in the evening about Student Union Awards. The nominations for the Irish Clover, Nancy J. Walsh, and Frank O'Malley Awards have been submitted to the Judicial Council and then provided to you all. So be sure to read through those. Nominators took a lot of time and heart and put that into their nominations. So be sure to just look through those. We'll adjudicate those after spring break, along with the Michael J. Colombo Award, pending the nomination from the Ethics Commission. So are there any questions about that at this point? Student Union Awards. Cool. And then our last executive announcement, happy spring break. Enjoy your spring break. Really do take a break. It's been a long year and a long semester, but we're getting there. So yeah. Also, after spring break, we have 3 meetings left. So we are kind of getting towards the end of our term together. And thank you all for your services. Great. So moving into general orders, I'll invite Maddie Tupi up to the front to give a presentation on the work of the CCC.
Okay, so hi, I'm Maddie, president of the CCC, for those who don't know me. I am constitutionally required once a semester to give a presentation kind of on what the CCC is doing with the money that we get from the student union and kind of how we're doing. And so last semester I kind of gave like a brief overview of like what the CCC is, how the different ways that we fund clubs on campus. And today I kind of wanted to get a little bit more specifically into winter reallocations and spring allocations, the 2 main ways that we fund clubs here on campus, and also get a little bit more into the philosophy behind how and why we give clubs the money that we do. I feel like this is very timely, especially given some of the discussions that we've been having in Senate recently. So yeah, I will jump into a refresher what the CCC is. Our main goal here on campus is to allocate the 40% of the student union budget that we get and give that to clubs as equitably as possible. We also help approve new clubs. We connect clubs with different resources on campus, but our main goal is really focusing on club funding. So starting with winter reallocations, this is supplementary funding that clubs can apply for. I think we just finished up at the beginning of February. So basically, like, first of all, to receive any funding from the CCC over the course of the school year, clubs have to apply for a spring allocation from us for the year before, and I'll get into spring allocation in a sec. And in order to be eligible for a winter allocation, it's usually for clubs who have big unexpected expenses just to get them through, and they need money just to get through the spring semester. So for example, performing arts clubs, I think there was one club that had like more members than they anticipated and they needed more gear. And then a lot of our allocation requests come from sports clubs who make tournaments that they weren't expecting to. And our club athletic teams have actually been doing a fantastic job this year. We've had a lot of clubs make it to tournaments that they've never made it to before, so that's exciting. And so yeah, a lot of clubs take advantage of this, and the exact number this year we had 29 clubs apply for funding from us. And then our final adjusted request, I'll explain what a final adjusted request is in a sec. But basically we had about $40,000 of final requests coming in from clubs, and we fulfilled about 60.7% of those requests. I know, I'm pretty sure we must have talked about it at some point in here, but when it comes for our time for our spring allocations, we on average fulfill about 50 to 60% of club final adjusted requests. But the 60.7% number is a little bit more, just because of like the lingering effects of decisions that we made revolving around COVID. So that's why that number is a little higher. And so how we give out money during winter allocations, we use what we deem the spring allocation simulation method. So we basically take the amount of money that the final adjusted requests that clubs are asking for. We plug that in to see what the club would have got if they had asked that number during the spring allocation last year. And then we take the difference between what they would have received, what they're asking for, and that number was the final amount that we gave them for winter allocations. And then based on all the math, it ends up benefiting clubs that got less money last spring. Now, winter reallocations, this is the primary way that we give clubs money. I think about 90% of our funds throughout the year, the 90% of the money that we're allocated goes towards spring allocations on average. So we receive on average about $2 million in requests from clubs every year. And last year, I think the number was around $2.2 million. And I'll get into the process in a sec, but it's very, very meticulous and very thorough. And we do I would say we do a very good job of making sure that every single dollar that we are giving clubs is going to something that is going to benefit the club and is core to the club's mission and purpose. So kind of what our timeline looks like. So we send out clubs basically information on how to fill out a budget sheet. Then we spend about 2 weeks where 2 CCC members from that club's division will meet with every single club that submitted a budget sheet, and they will go through their budget sheet and ask any questions that they have on anything that either looks weird or they just want more clarification on. From there, a CCC member from a different division will be assigned a budget sheet, will be assigned that budget sheet. They'll go through that, come up with any questions they have. And then we have this super big, long, terrifying, horrible, like it ends up being in 2 days, we meet for like 12 hours. And we go through every single club budget sheet that ends up being a request more than $0. And I think last year it ended up being like 70-ish clubs. So we go through 70 budget sheets, all however 40 CCC members. And so there's basically the point being that there's a lot of eyes that look over all the budget sheets for the clubs that we give money to. And yeah, I know April 17th, 18th is Easter, someone pointed out. So that these dates are very tentative and going to change. And then we give clubs money over the summer. Okay, so how we actually cut down the $2.2 million requests that we get from clubs. So to start off, we have what is called a tier system. So built into our budget sheets, we fund different expense items differently for different divisions of clubs. So for example, we fund up to 80% of performing arts clubs facility rental costs, because you're a performing arts club and you want to host a concert, you're going to need to pay for the venue, and that's very core to a club's mission. So we want to fund as much of that as possible. And so the highest tier that we have is we will fund up to 80% of whatever a tier 1 expense item is for that division. So right off the bat, we cannot fund more. We can't fund more than 80% of what clubs ask for. But then obviously the tier system like breaks down. I think most divisions, we only fund 35% of what they are asking for, like food for meetings, because that's not really core to their mission and purpose. And then we on our website we have a breakdown of what all those different tiers are, and we just adjusted them on the last couple of weeks too. So this final adjusted request number. So we take 2 numbers. The first is the maximum that the CCC can give them, which is their adjusted tiered requests. So you add up all of the requests that have been tiered. That's the max we can give them. And then there's also the amount that clubs need to break even, which is their projected budgeted shortfall. So that takes into account the amount of revenue that they also plan to gain over the next year too. And so those 2 numbers, we take the lesser of those numbers, and that is the club's final request. And I would say most of the time it ends up being the amount that the club needs to break even. Okay, so then we get to our final cut. So the number I mentioned earlier, so we are able to fund about 50 to 60% on average of clubs' final adjusted requests. So how we actually break down those final adjusted requests into the final amount that we give them, we use a method that we've developed over the last couple of years called the fundraising based cut. I'm just going to read this. Basically, the goal is to incentivize self-sufficiency by rewarding clubs that fundraise, and honest expense projection among clubs while not hindering the club's abilities to pursue their mission through programming. So this is kind of how we formed this formula that we use to create. I think you sent out like the spreadsheet, or like at least a screenshot of like the spreadsheet that we use. I don't know. I remember seeing that somewhere. But this is basically the formula that we use to get down the number. And just some quick facts: clubs are required to fundraise at least 20% of the money they receive from the CCC, and clubs are required to collect dues from at least 75% active members. We don't require them to collect dues for 100% of active members because it can be a financial burden on some people, and we don't want that. We don't want to penalize clubs that have members that can't necessarily afford the club's dues. And then the most the CCC can fund is 4 times what clubs are projected to fundraise. I think last year so of the clubs that we actually gave money to, on average, they were fundraising 3.3 times what we were actually giving them. So clubs do a lot of fundraising on their own, and all of them do this through ND Day 2022. Shameless plug, it's happening April 24th through 25th. Be sure to participate with your student orgs and halls and clubs and whatnot. Yeah, there's our email and all of the division's contact information. And I'm happy to take any questions anyone has.
Yeah. Real quick before we start questioning, can someone on Zoom just tell us that they can still hear us? We're working on getting the video back up, but yeah, if you can hear us, send a sign. Okay, there you go. Any questions?
Are dues?
Dues are from a fundraising for the club, yeah.
And how do you check?
Yeah, so when a club submits a budget sheet for the upcoming year, they also include like all of the money that they fundraised last year and all of the expenses for the events that they actually ended up hosting this past year.
And last one. So like athletic clubs, like a lot of do they often budget in the spring for nationals? And if not, what's the process with that? What does the process actually look like?
Yeah, so I think the clubs that typically do like most years go to nationals, they will budget for it in their spring allocation. But for the ones that don't, and like we've like I said, we've had a lot of clubs just like make it to these like huge tournaments that they've never been to. Very exciting. So the 2 ways that we've seen this year clubs do that is we had a couple clubs apply during the winter allocation process, and then we also have contingency appeals. So there was one club that like found out they made it to a tournament, and they had like a week to like book everything and like did like emergency funding from us. And so we use similar like philosophies, like we use the tiering system, and then we kind of like apply. Sometimes we like apply it to like a spring allocation process, what they would have gotten in the spring. But yeah, they can apply basically at any time with a contingency appeal too, if it's like an emergency situation.
So I guess given that there's a lot of like, I guess, formulas for allocating these funds, how I guess like one concern that I would have is like clubs maybe padding budgets in order to like kind of if they have an idea of what the formula would be. And I guess like, is that an issue that you'd see? And I guess how would you address that too?
Definitely. So I don't necessarily think that's an issue that I've seen in my time. But different ways that we kind of address that is one, we basically when the 2 CCC division representatives are meeting with the club, they try to really get a sense for what the club's mission and purpose is. And if there are any events that kind of like seem like they wouldn't necessarily align with that, we do make sure that questions are asked about that. We also look at past budget sheets the club has submitted. So if all of a sudden a club is hosting like 15 events and they've only hosted 3 in years past, we're going to ask why they're doing this. Has their membership increased? Like, are they receiving more additional funding from the outside? I think what else? Also, like we take a look at like all of the numbers that clubs are projecting. So for example, like we have caught clubs in the past just like significantly over projecting like how much it was going to cost for like a flight to like somewhere like New York or something. I don't know. And then we talk it through and we try to get that number down. So like I said, it's like a very meticulous process, but we do be sure to ask a lot of questions, especially through all of the different CCC members it has to go through before it gets final approval.
Okay, no, that makes sense. Thank you.
Well, if not, thank you and CCC at NU.edu. And to remember. Thank you.
Quick note on the technical difficulties. It seems like we would have to restart our computer to get the camera back on. So to everyone on Zoom and to everyone out there on YouTube, we're going to continue with audio only. And we apologize for that inconvenience. So moving further into general orders, we have a discussion on SO 21-2219 in order to amend the Constitution to adjust the methods of student union funds allocation. We have not read this order last time. Would you be comfortable reading the order?
All right. In order to amend the Constitution to adjust the methods of student union funds allocation. Whereas Article 3, Section 3B of the Constitution of the undergraduate student body, the University of New York, states that the Senate shall establish the policies of the student union and supervise proper implementation of the policy. Whereas Article 16, Section 3B of the Constitution dictates that 40% of student union funds be allocated annually by the Financial Management Board must be made available to student clubs and organizations. Whereas Article 16, Section 3E of the Constitution dictates that 9% of student union funds be allocated annually by FMB must be distributed among student union organizations. Whereas all aspects of managing funding, including but not limited to the following: creating a budget, requesting funds, arguing for the merit of the request, filling requirements for funding, supplementing income with fundraisers and dues, spending funding responsibly, and accommodating new ideas in light of former budgetary restrictions, are important in developing a sense of personal responsibility, ethical leadership habits, prepare students that are going to be a force for good in greater society. Whereas many undergraduate students are a member of a student club or organization, which indicates that the co-sponsor of this order that student clubs are foundational to many students' collegiate experiences in Notre Dame. Whereas club officers have repeatedly indicated to the CCC that a lack of funding constrains their ability to achieve their club's missions and enrich the holistic collegiate experience of their club's members. Whereas Club Coordination Council President Patty Tupy shared in the December 1, 2021 presentation to the Senate that the CCC allocations to clubs cover no more than 15% of club projected expenses. Whereas the CCC creates a final adjusted request for each club by setting an absolute cap on the amount of money allocated to any given club, imposing an additional maximum allocation of 5 times the amount of money fundraised by the club, and deprioritizing portions of club requests that are not central to the club's mission through a tiering system, as she described. Whereas even after significantly cutting down on clubs' requests, the CCC still only has sufficient money to fund 50 to 60% of clubs' final adjusted requests in the year. Whereas based on data from the Office of Student Union Treasurer, since the 2017-2018 student union term, an average of 80.66% of student union organization funding requests have been fulfilled through FMB allocations. Whereas this figure only changes by 3% fiscal years impacted by the COVID-19 pandemic are neglected. Whereas it is therefore apparent that student union organizations receive a far higher percentage of their allocation requests than clubs, even after club requests have been adjusted downwards. Whereas the percentage of final adjusted club requests fulfilled is taken to be 60%, equalizing this percentage with the percentage of student union organization requests fulfilled would require that 7% of the funds available for allocation are shifted from student union organizations to clubs, such that student union organizations receive 52% of the funds and clubs receive 47%. The appendix for calculation. Whereas the most consistent feedback obtained by the sponsors of this amendment has been a desire to avoid harming the financial standing of residence halls by shifting money away from student union organizations, including Hall President's Council. Whereas residence halls, like clubs, receive allocations from student union organization, in this case HPC, rather than from FMB directly. But unlike clubs, are not currently afforded a consistent line item in the budget. Whereas based on the aforementioned data from the Office of Student Treasurer over the past 5 years, HPC has received 16% of total allocated funds on average. 90% of HPC's allocated funds have been allocated to resident solids. Therefore, be it ordered by the Student Senate of the University of Notre Dame that Article 16, Section 3B of the Constitution is amended to read as follows. 47% of the funds available for FMD allocation shall be allotted to the line item flood organization. The minimum amount designated for distribution by the Flood Coordination Council, final review by the Financial Management Board. Article 16, Section 3D of the Constitution is amended as follows. 37% of their available funds shall be distributed among the following student union organizations. Article 16, Section 3C is inserted into the Constitution, and all subsequent subsections and references thereof and thereto are renumbered accordingly. 15% of available funds shall be allotted for the line item resident solids. The minimum amount designated for distribution by the Hall President's Council, final review by the Financial Management Board. So you may notice there's quite a bit of change to this. So since you last saw the order, we changed it to address some of the feedback we've heard, and now it directly implicates all funding. Since we acknowledge there was concern of the complexity of the issues at play, that we won't have the data point of the referendum that we have been aiming towards when we brought it to you last week, we think it would be appropriate to reconsider Maddie's motion, or previous recommendation rather, to have an ad hoc committee take a look at this. We'll be happy to take Maddie's recommendation that Claire, the current student treasurer, nominate 6 members of FMB to this committee, and that Madison, the chair of ComCon, nominate 6 ComCon members. We also believe that Minu Selvin, who's no longer a Senate member, would be an unbiased yet expert leader of this committee, and she's agreed to chair the ad hoc committee if it does exist. Therefore, I motion to have SO 21-2219 referred to an ad hoc committee on funding chaired by Minu Selvin, composed of 6 members of FMB, 6 members of ComCon, be selected by the chair of each body.
Second. The motion to refer to an ad hoc committee has been seconded. The motion is debatable. Are there any points of debate on this motion? Abraham?
Just more of a question than an actual point of debate, but would you guys be open to having actual Senate members sit on this committee as well, who have been heavily interested and invested in this resolution?
Dave?
Madison, the chair of ComCon, will be able to nominate ComCon members, including senators, including those very heavily invested, such as co-sponsors of this order. I should also note, while I have the time, that the reason 15, 16, and 90 numbers don't add up, which they don't, is because those numbers aren't absolute, which is why we don't want this being in debate yet. Those aren't polished yet.
Other points of debate on the motion to refer to committee?
I guess it's more of a question that we could stipulate that the chair be a vote. So we'd have a 6-6 split possible.
Even at the tie, the chair could be a tiebreaker. Oh, sorry. Yes, yeah.
So the motion has been friendly amended so that the chair may vote in the case of tie.
Yes.
Okay. Other points of debate or discussion? Paul?
This is a question. So would this effectively bring the decision out of the hands of the Senate and into the committee, or is it just that decision comes as an additional data point to then come back?
The latter. It would be a recommendation by a committee of those most heavily involved in this, similar to what ComCon would do in any other constitutional amendment or any other committee that we would refer any legislation to. It would not be binding in any way. The Senate could still choose to vote however they want to. But again, like I said, we've taken into account more considerations, and we do recognize the merit of having a group of special focus group look at this a bit more in depth. Let me come back before we bring it to the Senate for debate.
Any other points of debate or discussion?
Motion to move to a vote.
Second. There's no second. All those in favor of ending debate and moving to a vote on the motion to refer to committee, please raise your hand. All opposed? And all abstaining? Great. We are now in voting on the motion to refer to committee. All those in favor of sending this amendment to the ad hoc committee, please raise your hand. All opposed? And all abstaining. The amendment is sent to the ad hoc committee. I'll work with Madison and Minu to compose Claire to call the committee to order. Great. Thank you for reconsidering. Moving on, we have SS 21-2209, a resolution to bestow emeritus status on me. David, would you read the resolution?
I would love to, thank you. All right. On behalf of the entire student union, a resolution to bestow emeritus status on Maddie Bisner. Whereas Maddie Bisner faithfully and dutifully served as judicial council president for the first half of 2020 to 2021 term, putting forth their utmost efforts to ensure the consistent and ethical operation of the student union within its constitutional mandate. Whereas Maddie initiated a process of constitutional reform which simplified, clarified, and improved the operations of several student union organizations, a practice which continued after their time in office. Whereas Maddie helped lead a branch-by-branch evaluation of the bylaws and operations of student union organizations, greatly increasing the fidelity of the student union to its constitutional prerogatives, and setting an example which Judicial Council seeks to emulate to this day. Whereas Maddie undertook a comprehensive process of election reform which simplified and improved the manner in which the student union elects its leaders. Whereas Maddie's leadership in Judicial Council was not limited to their term as president, but it also included a term as Judicial Council Vice President of Elections and as a member of the Election Committee. Whereas as Judicial Council Vice President, Maddie steered Judicial Council through a challenging election season with admirable grace and integrity. Whereas in their current position of Student Body Vice President, Maddie has remained accessible to provide invaluable aid to the current Judicial Council despite their busy schedule. Whereas Maddie's contribution to the Student Union has thus stretched far beyond their service in Judicial Council. Therefore, be it resolved by the Student Senate of the University of Notre Dame du Lac that in recognition and appreciation of their dedication and contribution to the University of Notre Dame du Lac, the title of Judicial Council President Emeritus be bestowed upon Maddie Bisner.
Are there any questions on the resolution?
I ask unanimous consent to that question in the debate.
Are there any objections? Hearing none, we'll move into debate, and Madison will serve as acting chairperson. I'll step out for debate.
All right, are there any questions of debate on the resolution bestowing emeritus status on Maddie?
Motion to end debate, move to vote.
Second.
All right,
Oh, wait. No, I take that back.
you can withdraw your motion.
Cheryl.
Okay.
No, I just want to say, I have a quick story. There was one time we were talking about the Constitution, and I was referencing something weird, and Maddie remembered exactly the location of the reference and knew the exact location and quoted it perfectly. And I thought they had the Constitution right in front of them, and they did not. So Maddie knows the Constitution now, and there's sort of specific body, whether through judicial council presidency or the city vice president, special. And this is an honor that I'm 100% affirmative.
Are there any other points of debate?
Well, I was just going to say, I agree. He's definitely been a very inspiring leader to many churches in himself for the last several years. And his commitment is unwavering. And so this is well earned. And Danny, do you want to make a motion? I can go ahead.
Sure.
All right, motion to move out of the debate.
Second.
All right. All those in favor of moving out of debate and into a vote, please raise your hand. All those opposed? All those abstaining? All right, we are now in voting procedure on bestowing emeritus status on Maddie Bisner. All those in favor of passing the resolution, please raise your hand. All those opposed? Abstain? All right, can someone let Maddie know?
Thank you all. Moving on, we have a resolution to bestow merit status on David the second as well. David, if you'll read that resolution.
Yes, on behalf of the entire student union, a resolution to bestow merit status on Thomas Davis II. Whereas Thomas Davis faithfully and dutifully served as judicial council president for the second half of the 2020 to 2021 term, putting forth his utmost efforts to ensure the consistent and ethical operation of the student union within its constitutional mandate. Whereas Thomas led judicial council to a fair and engaging student body election cycle with increased turnout and no instances of misconduct almost immediately after his confirmation, and introduced new means of engaging voters throughout his term as judicial council president. Whereas Thomas ably represented the concerns of students from the peer advocacy perspective to university administration in the midst of the campus compact. Whereas Thomas's leadership in judicial council is not limited to his term as president, but also included 2 years as the student union parliamentarian. Whereas as student union parliamentarian, chairman of the Committee on the Constitution, and judicial council president, Thomas contributed to a process of constitutional reform, bylaw review, and improved adherence to constitutional standards that bettered the operations of many student union organizations and set a model for judicial council that persists to this day. Whereas Thomas has earned and developed a reputation for an unrivaled knowledge and skilled interpretation of parliamentary procedure and constitutional texts. Whereas in his position as off-campus council president, Thomas has continued to be an invaluable resource to judicial council with his continuous advice and service on the Committee on the Constitution. Whereas Thomas's contribution to the student union has thus stretched far beyond his service as judicial council. Therefore, be it resolved by the Student Senate of the University of Notre Dame du Lac that in recognition and appreciation of his dedication and contribution to the University of Notre Dame du Lac, the title of Judicial Council President Emeritus be bestowed upon Thomas Davis.
Are there any questions on this resolution? Abraham,
I ask unanimous consent to provide a question.
are there any objections? Hearing none, we so move. We are now in debate on the resolution. Submission myself, I'll go first. When we were sent home, March 2020, for COVID, it was Thomas Davis in his role as student union parliamentarian that almost single-handedly pulled the student union. I nominated him last year for the Plum vote because he should have won it. And I nominated him again this year because the service to the student union is invaluable and unrivaled. So, please vote yes. Danny?
Yeah, I'm gonna second what Maddie said, being a senator for 2 terms, just seeing his leadership during just the crazy semester of going through all those COVID resolutions and then just guiding us all through, because I was the first senator for Bomber as a freshman, and I had no idea what was going on. He helped me through writing resolutions and doing all that, all the Senate stuff. So yeah, no, he's just a stand-up guy.
Other points of debate or discussion? Yes.
I'd like to see my time circle.
Yes, Nicole.
I'm the off-campus vice president. Thomas has been wonderful throughout his new role, and people might not be fully aware exactly how much he knows about the content. Basically, referred to last two years on it, and errors that have been persisting, and then just make sure that boundaries that kids are living on campus.
Also on off-campus council. I heard Thomas the other day say all the roles he's held in student government. It was actually crazy. This was in a meeting, we were just listening in for a while. So he knows the ins and outs. He, like, just working with him this year has come up with a ton of ideas for everything. He's always thinking about how to
Al?
Yeah, I want to second everything. He's like the person who took me in whenever I was a sophomore, and I knew nothing about the Constitution or how to be a senator. I also don't know why I was a senator, but I don't know anyone else getting into. But he took me under his wing, wrote my first resolution, amendments to the Constitution. But beyond that, we're here saying a lot of nonsense about one thing I'll say about him, he hasn't invited me to dinner yet. Sounds like he's a perfect human being. So I'll love to see her.
Other points of discussion or debate? Okay.
Yeah, I agree with everything that's been said. He's been very much a larger than life figure in the student union when I started in the Senate last year. And his service is undeniably fantastic, and his commitment, his desire to see this organization serve students well, even as a senior, you know, on his way to graduating. So I'm going to go ahead and just in general say everything that's been said. I second it all, and I motion to move out of state.
The second. All those in favor of moving to a vote, please raise your hand. All opposed? And all abstentions? Okay, we're now in a vote. All those in favor of passing Thomas Davis Emeritus resolution, please raise your hand. All opposed? And all abstain. Great. Could someone tell Thomas the good news? Congratulations. And that brings us, I believe, to the end of general orders. Moving into new business, SS 21-22-11, a resolution to commend the student union, Division of Student Affairs for their work on gateway housing. This was a resolution that Alan and I authored along with colleagues earlier this week, following the announcement that we would have space for gateway transfers up to 75, and then for the gateway 9.0 students that they would also be able to have on-campus housing. So we'll be able to bring that, we urged the Division of Student Affairs to take action in the fall. They have now taken that action, and we can now say thank you very much, and recognize in this last whereas statement that there is ongoing need for discussion on how to meet the needs of the transfer community. So looking forward to that discussion. Also, we have SO 21-22-20 in order to appoint a senator to serve the rest of the term. David?
Yeah, I just wanted to motion to move SO 21-22-20 to general order.
The motion is to move SO 21-22-20 to general orders. There is a second. All those in favor, please raise your hand. All opposed? And all abstentions. So the motion passes. David, could you read the order?
In order to appoint a senator to serve the rest of the term.
Oh, McLean.
That motion is discussed.
Second.
The motion is to dispense with the reading. All those in favor, please raise your hand. All opposed? And all abstain. We are now in questioning on the order. Are there any questions for David on the order? Yes.
We already know who's replacing senator. Yeah, it's the person who's being, who I'm suggesting we appoint to fill the role for the rest of the term is the person who will be serving next year.
Any further questions? McLean?
Motion to move out of questioning.
Second.
All those in favor, please raise your hand. All opposed? And all abstain. We're now in debate. Are there any points of discussion or debate on the order? Okay.
Motion to move out of debate into the vote. Second.
All those in favor of ending debate and moving to a vote, please raise your hand. All opposed? And all abstaining? We're now in a vote. All those in favor of approving the order, please raise your hand. All opposed? And all abstaining? The order passes. And we'll be joined by a new friend next week. Great. And new business. We've already covered it. Oh, thing.
Not to get ambitious, but just so we can clean our slate before spring break. I'd also like to motion to bring the resolution to commend the Division of Student Affairs for their work on gateway housing up to new business. Second.
All those in favor of moving SS 21-22-11 into general orders, please raise your hand. All opposed? And all abstaining. The resolution is brought to general orders. Alan, would you be able to read this resolution?
A resolution to commend the Division of Student Affairs for their work on gateway. Whereas, in a report on October 1st, 2021, the students in the 2021 to 2022 gateway cohort were informed that they should not anticipate having on-campus housing in 2022 through the 2023 academic year. Whereas, on the 10th of November 2021, the Student Senate resolved to urge the University of Notre Dame to provide ND Gateway 9.0 students the same unique and important opportunity for on-campus housing experience as incoming Notre Dame first year students. Whereas, in an official statement on the 12th of February 2022, the Office of Residential Life wrote that one sufficiently committed to Notre Dame gateway students not exceeding 75 will be assigned to on-campus housing during the summer preceding their fall enrollment by Notre Dame's Office of Residential Life. Whereas, in a letter to students on the 20th of February 2022, the Office of Residential Life announced that they are now able to provide on-campus housing to gateway 9.0 students who would like to live in a residence hall community next fall. Whereas the Student Senate recognizes the need for continued engagement on the housing options of transfer students in exceptionally large gateway. Therefore, be it resolved by the Student Senate of the University of Notre Dame do Lac that the Division of Student Affairs is commended for their work to guarantee housing for students.
Are there any questions on this? Okay.
Motion and question move to debate.
Second.
All those in favor of ending questioning and moving to debate, please raise your hand. All opposed? And all abstaining? We are now in debate on the resolution. Are there any points of debate?
As someone who's been in Senate for 2 years, went through the COVID year last year, and then has been council involved in these discussions, I am very pleased to see this quick turnaround all of a sudden. The Division of Student Affairs is going to work to try and provide on-campus housing gateway students next fall, especially given that just 2 weeks earlier, it seemed like that wasn't going to be the case, that they were only looking beyond gateway. So I am very, very, very pleased to see this for sure. Encourage us to pass. Okay.
I would agree with everything that Ben said. We talked about this from campus-wide council, and it was kind of disheartening because we really thought there was going to be absolutely nothing we could do because the administration was saying, like, we're not changing our minds on this, we're not getting any reasoning. So to see a group of people to turn that around so quickly and ensure that our friends from the house who are coming here as gateways do have housing, I think is incredibly important for us to acknowledge all the hard work.
Other points of debate?
I must commend this resolution. Given the fact that we do a lot of talking in this body, that sometimes maybe even often doesn't actually result. So the fact that we are commending the Division of Student Affairs for listening, bridge future gaps in terms of how we deal with the body. Not here just I also must say that this takes a tremendous weight away from HPC, away from our campus. What they would have had to do next year in terms of accommodate. Really do deserve to be a part of it. Here's what it is. So this is a very important stride. Ben's point as well. I've seen these types of great success stories. Often, especially, we must
I also want to give recognition to Robert and Liam, who were the Holy Cross students who helped out with this. I kind of acted as the facilitator for them to kind of get their word in, and just their like diligence. They were here like for weeks and weeks on end when like, that's a really long walk to come over here for a Senate meeting. Their work is just really remarkable, and I think they should definitely be recognized for the work they've done.
What I'll add on is Danny, thank you so much for your work writing the resolution alongside Mary Griffin, Mary DeVoe, Abraham, Natty Creepy. Y'all are some of the biggest reasons that this went through, but even also you've been bringing that up always in council. It makes a difference. So I want y'all to be 100% aware of that, sort of the work that you did. And students now have a place that they can call home. The council will do that.
Other points, David?
Yeah, no, I think it's really important to provide positive feedback, and along with that, I think the campus life council could also perhaps do that, just because it's maybe closer here. So I guess question for the Senate that might best be answered by Aaron is whether we could have this on Sales's agenda Monday, or whether we need an amendment to that.
I can add it.
Or whatever the next.
Whatever next meeting is. I can add it on that. Yeah.
Other McLean?
Motion to
Second. Okay, motion to end debate and move to a vote. All those in favor, please raise your hand. All opposed? And all abstain. We are now in a vote. All those in favor of approving, please raise your hand. All opposed? And all abstaining. Thank you very much. We've already covered student union awards, but please again read through those nominations. As soon as I have the Palumbo Award letter, I'll also send that out to you all. Any other new business that people are working on? Do you want to talk about the OCC order?
You go ahead.
Okay.
Yeah.
This Monday, the Committee on the Constitution approved part of an order to amend the composition of sub to include a representative from off campus. And then the other part of that order is being held back for further review. So expect that to be on our agenda early, well, after spring break. And then anything else? Do we approve anything else? Okay. Cool. Any other new business that people are working on? Hearing none, we can move right into announcements. What announcements do you have? Yes.
Sign up to Great Hall of the Year. Thanks, everyone. I only need a couple more. Seriously, I'm like scheduling you guys right now. I literally need like 2 or 3 more. Please do it.
Please and thank you. Other announcements? Yes.
This is a sad announcement. Unfortunately, Coach Cafe is canceled for this week. So awful. So have a good spring break. We'll be back.
Other announcements?
Oh, so if you're a sophomore, and this is sort of to hold us over to next year, where like we're trying to get together like a real like TEDx UND event. Sophomore class council is putting on sort of like a TEDx type, not related, no copyright kind of deal. Once we get back from spring break. So if you're a sophomore and you'd be interested in speaking, we're going to be getting that out pretty soon. So please apply. We want to hear what you have
Other announcements? Is there a motion? Abraham,
Motion to adjourn.
is there a second? All those in favor, please raise your hand. All opposed? Have a good night, everybody.
Yeah. Let me end this.